Hello and welcome to On Public Square, a City of Clarksville podcast where we get to know the amazing city employees that help keep the lights on. They're our friends, our family, our neighbors, and each of them has a story to tell. Now, let's say hello. Hello, and welcome to another episode of On Public Square. We're back, and we have today, we're doing a bit of a special episode. It's Women's History Month this month, and sort of in honor of that, we decided to have one of our local leaders who is a longtime city employee and has really made a difference within city management. I have with me my office neighbor and our city clerk, Lisa Canfield. How are you doing today, Lisa?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to share a little bit about what goes on in the clerk's office.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this one. Your job is one of the most interesting to me, honestly. And I'm always fascinated with the keeping of documents, being someone who loves being in the library and doing that type of research and cataloging. I've always found your job to be one of the most fascinating up here.
Well, I think I have the best job in the city. I love what I do. I love that I am the keeper of things. I am the keeper of all the historical documents. I have documents dating back to the 1800s. It's super cool for a history geek like me, and it's just an honor and a privilege to be the one responsible for all of those items.
Yeah, and I guess kind of backing up even, what exactly is a city clerk?
So the city clerk actually goes back to ancient times. The role has been around a really long time. I always say I'm the keeper. I'm the keeper of the city seal. I'm the keeper of all the legislature that has passed within the city by city council. Um, I attest documents, attest the mayor's signature, and it's important that I work with the legal department to make sure that we are following all of our sunshine laws and that our boards and commissions do as well.
Mm.
It's just a really, really busy office, and different cities have different roles with their city clerks. So, some smaller cities, they may do HR and finance as well. Some of the larger cities will have multiple staff in their office
Mhm.
someone will focus primarily on the agenda. Someone might focus on just doing the minutes.
Mhm.
So it's different for each office.
Mm. And in your case, it's you and our listeners have met Stephanie Jenkins last year, who came up to talk about Women of Clarksville Expo, and it's basically the two of you form the clerk's office. Yes.
Yes. So uh, the city attorney and I had talked, and this office, our city is growing, there is more work within the city's office. So the mayor was gracious enough to share Stephanie with me. So she is part time my deputy city clerk, and she's wonderful, and I'm so grateful
Yeah.
for her.
Uh, Very much agreed. Uh, I know you've worked in a couple other cities. Kind of tell me what led to your starting in government work and why, and what kind of led up to coming to Clarksville.
So my dad was a retired police officer and always taught us about service. He started out in the corporate world and didn't enjoy being in an office. He kind of fell into his job with the city of Sacramento and loved it. He loved serving people. And so I grew up watching that.
Mhm.
I worked in both the public and the private sector. And for me, public sector is far more interesting. I feel like I am able to give more to the community. I started out at the city of Rancho Cordova. I was very involved. I started actually in the building department.
Is that California?
It's in California,
Okay.
yes. So I started out in the building department. The city manager took me under his wing and started giving me more projects. So I managed conference room rentals.
I would definitely want to put a pin in that term city manager because I
Yes.
want to talk about the charter a little
Mhm.
later on. And I know that was a topic of discussion back a few years ago. And I thought that maybe we can educate a little bit about that today.
Sure.
Um, but so Rancho Cordova,
Uh-huh.
Sacramento, you
Yeah.
said. So you've worked in a few cities.
I have. So I worked at the city of Rancho Cordova, and then I worked for the city of Sacramento. City of Sacramento, I wasn't there very long. I ended up with an opportunity to move here to Clarksville, but in Sacramento, I worked as the assistant to one of our council members. Back there, it's a little bit different. So each council member has their own office and their own staff.
Mhm.
And so I ended up working in his office, and I got to do a lot within the community. I planned events, I planned the 4th of July parade for the city of Sacramento. It was a fun job. I just really loved it. Ultimately, my goal was to end up in the city clerk's office in some capacity.
Mhm.
And then my husband and I decided to move out here and follow our children. And he said we could move here, but I had to find a job. And so I said, challenge accepted. And I landed a job in the mayor's office. And
And he with gas and water, right?
yes, my husband works for Gas and Water. He retired in California. He worked as a risk manager for a large grocery chain there. And he retired when we moved out here, and it was during COVID. So he was very bored and ended up going to work for Gas and Water, completely different job. He's actually a meter reader and he loves it. He loves being outside. It's a great thing for him.
Between you two and your dad, that's quite the
Mhm.
legacy of public service, and that's awesome. And I think that's been true for a lot of people I've spoken with. That's been a common theme that a lot of the people that decide they want to work in the
Mhm.
public sector, that are interested in a job that involves that kind of public service, it sort of becomes a tradition. There's a lot of people here whose parents and grandparents worked for the city or the state or something similar, and I've always thought that was really fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of my dad's colleagues, his sons and daughters became police officers or
Mhm.
went to do some other work and service. I think when you see that example and you're raised with that, um, you learn to want to give back to your community. And there's a lot of rewards working with public service. We certainly don't do it for the money, we do it for the love of our community. And I think you really have to have a heart of a public servant to
Yeah.
really enjoy the role.
Yeah. Uh, I want to clarify for Lisa's sake to anyone listening, she predates the overall wave of people coming from
I
California
do.
by quite a bit.
I
But
do.
that being said, moving from the West
Uh,
Coast and from, well, I don't think you were quite on the coast though in California.
I
California's
wasn't.
big.
California's big. I was, several hours from the ocean. I grew up in, the Sacramento Valley.
Mhm.
I grew up in a very small town of about 10,000 people. It grew exponentially. It reminds me a lot of Clarksville,
Mhm.
and it's continued to grow, quite a bit.
Well, I have two questions then. One, what do you miss about West Coast life the most? And two, what's your favorite thing you've encountered either just in Clarksville or on this side of the country or in the South even?
Well, California is beautiful. I'm not gonna lie there. I miss some of the places we'd go. We'd go to San Francisco pretty regularly up to Lake Tahoe. So I miss places. I miss some of our family. We still have family in the Santa Barbara area. My husband's family is from the Santa Barbara area. And so I miss some of my family and friends that I grew up with. But we love Clarksville. This is home. I'm so thrilled to be here. People, I think for me, the people here are what makes Clarksville home to me.
Mm.
Everybody is so friendly. When we first moved here, was talking to a woman in the ice cream aisle for about a half an hour. And my husband said, "Do you know her?" And I said, "No, we just started chatting." And that was that. Our neighbors are friendly. It's just a different, more relaxed way of life here. And it's just absolutely beautiful. Tennessee is stunning. And I'm so proud to call this my home.
Yeah. You're a local, restaurant aficionado too. We often talk about our favorite places to our favorite
Yeah.
local eateries. You got any favorites right now?
My new favorite, is probably well, gosh, that's hard. We like to go I eat once a week, but probably the latest restaurant we went to was the
Old Glory, I
Old
think we talked
Glory.
about?
Yes, went to
Yeah.
Old Glory. It's phenomenal. When the waitress came and asked my husband what he wanted, he said, "I want everything." I mean, everything looks so good. So now it's our mission to go and try everything on their menu. But we also like everything downtown.
Yeah.
Downtown is so exciting to see all the businesses opening
Mhm.
down here. And for us, we like to just come down. They're our local neighbors
Mm.
who own these businesses. So we want to support them and
Mhm.
um,
That's having grown up in Clarksville, it's really interesting having gone from when I was a kid, there wasn't really many
sure.
reasons to come downtown, and now
Mm,
I love hanging out on
yeah.
Franklin Street or over here on Strawberry Alley. There's a lot to do, there's
Uh-huh.
always events, you can catch a show.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
All sorts of stuff. Love
Phenomenal.
it. I was talking with Jimmy
Uh,
recently about how until recently, I think something just closed down, but we had a pretty long stint of every storefront being occupied
mhm.
downtown for a little while, which is awesome. But anyways, back to City Clerk. This is about the people, so we can go
Yeah.
off on
We could
tangents.
forever and
Yeah.
ever, and I could talk about Clarksville forever.
Kind of going back to
Uh,
the differences in those, are there any big notable differences you've noticed in how Clarksville runs things versus the other cities you've worked for?
Well, I worked for the city of Rancho Cordova, was a very small city, smaller than Clarksville. City Hall was a lot smaller, less employees. So we had to do more with less. And so we all had multiple roles, multiple hats that we wore.
Mhm,
Um, the city of Sacramento, um, it's about the size of Clarksville in area, but in people much much larger. um and so, some of the differences were, again, city council all had their own offices and their own staff. The mayor's office, the mayor had a very huge staff.
mhm,
His communications department, he had just his own communications department, not just for
mhm.
the city. And so lots of staff there. It was almost like an entourage when he'd go places, whereas here, it's quite different. You know, I think government work in a lot of ways is government work. It's the same kind of issues. I think that's why I was able to slide in pretty easily when I got
Mhm,
here. We call things, different things. Our street department back
mhm.
there was public works.
Oh,
But it's all the same,
mhm,
and you're still trying to make sure you get our citizens the help they need.
mhm.
So I think at the end of the day, that core of public service is the same. It's just the size of the office and the city that you are working for that's
Very
different.
cool. And of course, you came in from our longtime city clerk previously, Sylvia Skinner.
Ah, big
Uh,
shoes to fill.
yeah.
Big shoes. She was wonderful, and I'm very fortunate that she left such a beautifully organized office for me and a great jumping point for me then to grow and
Mhm.
expand.
Though you made one big change that I really
Mhm,
appreciated back when I was a reporter,
mhm,
which was hyperlinking the ordinances and resolutions in the
mhm.
agendas. That made things so much easier as far as
Ah,
like navigating those long documents.
we
Um,
It's incredible the difference something small like that can make. Even the amount of paper that was being used, we worked it out to how much we saved the city each year by tree. And I don't remember the number, but it was
mhm,
pretty significant. And then time, because you're not having. If we hadn't had those hyperlinks, they could be 500-page agendas, and it's hard
mhm,
to navigate. And so now, like you said, during a council meeting, you can just go to the link and it pops up what you need, and then you can go back to the
mhm,
agenda. So
mhm.
I'm very proud of that.
As far as lots of paper
Mhm.
goes and mentioning like the state of organization in the clerk's office, you deal with a lot of documents and a lot of records.
I do.
How far back do those go all the way back?
All the way to the 1800s. So back then, they didn't have the technology, so everything's handwritten, and
Mhm,
it's I have the worst handwriting. When Miss Sylvia left, I thought, "Oh gosh, I have to sign stuff. I got to practice my signature because I have the worst." But everything is written just beautifully, and anytime anyone wants to, I get excited about it. I'm always happy to share and show because it's the history of our city, and it's important. We had a group of students that were just fascinated um, by these books, and so over time you can see the change. It goes from handwritten to then typewritten, to then now computer, and to now everything's electronic and we have electronic records.
mhm,
But by law, I still have to print those out. Any ordinances or resolutions or minutes, I have to print those out, and the mayor has to sign, and I have to sign, and then they go into a physical book.
mhm.
So I have to keep both digital, but also hard copies as well in my office.
And there was a big move to digitize a bunch of those old files back a couple years ago, right?
Right. So I'm in the process now of getting everything ready to digitize. I went through all the boxes and thought, well, what do I have to save? What can I get rid of? And so going through all of that. And so now we're working towards my first priority is of books.
Mhm.
getting because they're starting to deteriorate over
Mhm.
time, and those are precious. So that's my first goal is to get those books scanned and indexed, and then from there we'll go into all of the ordinances and resolutions, get all that legislation scanned and indexed as well.
At that point, that's like museum work almost, some of that.
Absolutely. I mean, they have to be very careful. It has to be somebody that knows what they're doing
Mhm.
so that they can handle them carefully.
I always think of, I really liked the movie National Treasure growing up,
Yes.
and there's the scenes at the beginning where they're handling the documents in the
Uh-huh.
museum. I forget like, female lead's name in the
I don't
movie,
remember,
but
but
just handling the
loved
old
it.
Constitution and
Mhm.
such with gloves and being very careful
Yeah.
and sterile room, and
We dragged my kids to the National Archives when they were little, and
oh,
they
I
were
love it.
bored out of their minds, but I was just like a kid in a candy store. It was, most of it was, well, behind that wall is, but it was still
Mhm.
incredible, the amount of history that was in that building.
What is the oldest document you've been, been or got to handle on yourself with your own 2 hands?
We have a book that it lists all the different uh, financials from, gosh, I want to say like 1865,
Wow.
1880. And it's just incredible to look at what they spent on, on things. And so that's probably one of the oldest
Wow.
documents that we have. I'm sad because it's starting to develop holes in the
Mm,
paper. And so those are really, for me,
mm.
critical.
So I'll say that would make me nervous. I get
Yeah.
nervous sending out news releases to the, like,
Mhm.
few thousand people that get them. I'm like, "Oh, I can't take that send button back." I
Yeah.
can only imagine I can't put this paper back together.
No. And I sometimes, it panics me the thought of handing it over to somebody
Mhm,
to have to, document and index, and I have to trust that they're going to treat these things with as much care and concern as I would.
mhm,
But it's imperative that we do that because
mhm.
we have to keep these documents.
I'm just thinking, you're talking about how they have to be
Mhm.
still kept physical as well
Mhm.
as digital for a lot of these. I feel like maybe in the past year, and this is just me thinking, but I feel like that's gained a new importance in this era of we've been talking so much up here about AI and the
Mhm.
ethics of AI
Mhm.
and how the world is going to change.
Yeah,
We just
so
talked
different.
with some folks with IT on a
Mhm.
previous episode just about the rise of AI and the new struggles that creates in regards to cybersecurity. And that goes, I think most people are
Mhm.
thinking about like dates or people's faces and
Mhm.
voices being used, but that also goes to being able to recreate in very fine detailed documents, and at
Mhm.
that point, the physical documents become just so important.
They do, because that's, not only is it our history, those are our local laws that have been passed here,
Mhm,
our ordinances. People don't understand that ordinances, that's actually, local legislation that we've passed. And so it's important that we have those copies because if something were to get changed or manipulated online, we have to have the originals and the proof of what has happened. And it also helps me, as we start to digitize things. I get so many requests throughout the year for records requests,
mhm,
and somebody will want some random something from the 1980s.
mhm.
Well, those aren't digitized yet. So
Yeah.
we really we had to do something recently where we really had to work to pin down what they were looking for,
Mm,
and then I had to pull in a couple of other departments to help me understand what it was that they wanted. We found it, but
mhm,
it takes time, and I want to change that so we can
mhm.
easily find what they need. And then if they want to
Yeah.
get come get a copy of it or whatever, it just makes that much
Mhm.
easier for them.
And people should know that, having worked in a previous
Mhm.
position where I filed a lot of,
Yeah.
records requests, uh, it's something you gotta learn to be good at. It's
Right.
easy to submit a not great or a
Mhm.
too vague records
Yes.
request, and I don't think people realize that involves a handful of
Oh,
people running around for a few days. If
yeah.
you had advice for folks who are submitting records requests to make sure that they get the info they need in a good amount of
Mhm.
time, what would that advice be?
Give as much information as you can. So, our legal department has this fabulous software. The link is located on our website that you can fill out to do a records request. So, be as specific as you are able. If you can narrow down, don't just say this happened in the 1980s. If you kind of have an idea, maybe 1982, or as year specific as you
Mhm,
can be. If you have an idea of a month range, that
mhm,
helps me because then I can go back and start reading through. But it does involve right now, it does
mhm,
involve then having to go manually looking through
mhm,
each book. Sometimes, if it's a lot of information, we've even asked if they want to come down and just look through
mhm, mhm.
themselves. We've done that before. But I think really my biggest tip is just be as specific
Mhm.
as you can.
I think keywords were always a big thing for
Keywords are
me
huge.
because I often would have to like I need all the correspondence
Mhm.
between these dates involving this address
Yes.
might be an example.
Mhm.
And instead of saying I need all the emails from this city employee for the past 3 years,
Right.
that's going to take someone weeks
Yeah,
at
or
best.
sometimes, months and
Mhm.
months of work.
But if you say I need you to
Yeah.
hit control find and I just need the correspondence involving this address
Mhm.
where this name is mentioned.
Yes.
That
Yes.
takes 1,000 documents to
It
4.
it makes a huge difference. And so, like I said, just be as specific as you can. And if you have questions, call our city attorney's office,
Mhm,
and they're happy to help and give you some suggestions and
mhm.
um,
And
help
some
where they
stuff is
can.
pre-published online. We have the city
You
code and such on the website. You can hit go in there
Yes.
and hit control find.
A lot of people don't realize how useful our website is. We have all of our agendas and minutes are posted on the website. We have our ordinances and resolutions that have passed over the years are on the website.
Mhm,
Like you mentioned, our city code of ordinances and our zoning code is on the internet or on our webpage already. So you can actually go in and search these things yourself
mhm,
without having to go through a records request. So sometimes it might be helpful for you to look there first. If you can't find it,
mhm.
then do your records request.
And it all just got a good little bit better with our website redesign.
It did. Our website is fabulous.
Mhm,
And we also made a change in the clerk's office with some new software. So we have moved to agenda management software. And so that has changed the look on our website when you're looking for agendas and minutes. It's so much easier to read and find what you need. The videos for the meetings are also uploaded on the agenda. So if you want to go back and watch, you can. It's just phenomenal the information that is actually right there at your fingertips.
mhm. And that brings us to
Mm.
the other aspect of your job, which is you sit in on a lot of committee meetings and, of course, the city council.
I
How
sure
many
do.
do you know off the top of your head how many, like, committees and boards we have?
We have about 48 boards and commissions, and then we have our city council committees as well. I think there's 7 or 8.
Mhm.
And so I kind of oversee all of those. Fortunately, I don't have to attend all of them. That'd be
That would
all I
never end.
that would never end, and that'd be all I do. So we have liaisons within our staff here at City Hall who handle a lot of our boards and commission meetings, and even some of our city council committee meetings as
Mhm,
well. But it's a lot of work making sure that we get all their agendas and minutes posted on time. I have to post the agendas 48 hours in advance. Our state law changed last August. And so we had to update our code to make that change so that I now am required to have items 72 hours in advance, and then I post them 48 hours in advance per state law.
mhm,
So it's a lot to track and make sure that we, get the items. And every now and then I'll do a quick call to all the liaisons. Hey, get me all your minutes. We need to get them uploaded.
mhm.
So it's
And by the way, with all those
Mhm.
boards and committees and such, if you're interested, we're looking for folks to sit on
We
them.
sure
Yeah,
are.
let's get a shameless plug in here real quick.
I
Apply.
absolutely. We are one of the things we're working on is our boards and commissions, getting our all the different seats filled. And so we just recently did a press release asking for people to
Mhm,
apply. Some people weren't sure if they were immediate positions. Some are, some aren't. Um, we Right now I am going to council with a resolution, or we're going to council with a resolution at the April council meeting with I think 5 or 6 um, board and commissions
mhm,
that are going to have seats filled. You can go online to the website and fill out the application for any board or commission you want to serve on. You can go and look at those boards and commissions on our
mhm,
website to see what they're about. You can call me. I'm happy to share with you what's expected and required to serve on those boards.
Mhm.
But it's just a great way to get involved in your
Mhm.
community, and it's just another way to serve.
Mhm.
And so, we're looking for people to come serve
Mhm.
and
And if there's an issue you have in the community, something that is a passion of
yeah,
yours, see if we have a board that deals with
absolutely.
that thing. If you have a passion for
Mhm.
making sure kids get to school safe, come and look at streets
Yes.
garage or that
Tra-
one's a city council one, but
That's a city council one, but you can still come to speak to meetings.
yeah.
So even if you don't want to serve on a board or a commission, you can still come to speak at all of our meetings are open to the public. They all have, we're, required by law to have an item on the agenda for public comment, which allows for 3 people to speak for 5 minutes each. So come to the meetings, come even just to listen and see what's going on. We post all the meeting dates and times on our agenda. You can come to council meetings. They're all open to the public. For regular session, if you want to do public comment, that is the only meeting you have to register with me to do, and you need to register the Tuesday prior to the council meeting by noon. But there's all kinds of ways for you to get involved
Mhm.
and participate in your community and your community, and affect change.
Yeah. And if you can't be there for city council, of course, we do broadcast them.
Mhm.
I think most people probably know that by now. I think some people got a little lost. We moved to YouTube back
Yes.
last year because that way it was a little more accessible and
Mhm.
easy to catalog them for later use.
And if you don't watch live, again, they're recorded and on the
Mhm.
website. And if you see something that sparks your interest, even you can even email and write or call your city council members.
Oh,
All of
yeah.
their contact information is also on our webpage.
Mhm.
Um,
They also, several of them have newsletters and such. If your
yes,
council member has a newsletter, you can sign up for that to
absolutely.
get their takes on what they're thinking. You can get their contact info to
Mhm.
reach out to them directly. Most of them use their city. All I think just all of them have a city council email
They
as
do all
well that's
have a city
issued.
email. Uh huh.
So yeah, that's all wonderful. One thing that I have always enjoyed talking with you about, Lisa, because I have a bit of a nerdy interest in is Robert's Rules of
Oh,
Order,
yes.
which some people might know as parliamentary
Hmm.
procedure. I grew up learning Robert's Rules. I didn't know that term. I always heard it
Yes.
called parliamentary
Uh huh.
procedure
Yep.
because my grandfather is a retired union
Mhm.
organizer. And I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother would clean some of the local law offices. And for when I was 3 or 4, I would go with them. And my grandfather occasionally would as well to keep an eye on me. And we would sit in one or two of the boardrooms, and he
Mhm.
would walk me through how parliamentary procedure works when I was 5.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Forgot a lot of it
Uh
along the
huh.
way. Then I did FFA in high school and relearned it. But I've always thought all that is fascinating.
It really is. It's order.
Mhm,
And for what I do, order is important.
mhm,
And so it's a way to ensure that the meeting flows properly. It ensures that everyone has an opportunity to speak, but that one person doesn't maybe take over a meeting.
mhm,
It's equitable. It's just there's no question on what's supposed to take place if
mhm,
you follow Robert's rules. And so the city does follow Robert's rules. The only difference is that if it if there's something that is a little bit different because of either city code or state regulations, that would then trump
mhm,
Robert's rules. So that gets a little confusing sometimes. But for the most part,
mhm.
that's what we follow.
And for those unfamiliar, to
Mhm.
be very clear on what Robert's
Mhm.
rules are, they're named after, I believe it's Justice Roberts
Yes. Mhm.
who kind of wrote the book
Mhm.
on this. They've been sort of fiddled with over the
Oh,
years and
absolutely. So many
tweaked,
different editions. Yeah.
but it's essentially about who can talk when
Mhm.
and what it takes to motion, second, and pass.
Yes.
What the differences are between ordinance and resolution.
Mhm.
Uh, which I'm going to put a pin in that one. We should talk about that too.
Sure.
Um, and it's a lot of what dominates how proceedings work in
Yes.
local government. And we have some very strong parliamentarians
Oh, we sure do.
and very knowledgeable folks on city council.
Mhm.
Uh, None less than our own recently retired or soon to retire Lance Baker, who
Yes.
gave me or who recommended me Robert's Rules for Dummies as being
Amen
one
to
of the
that. I
best
have a copy on
books.
my desk.
I've had a lot of long talks with him about Robert's Rules because we
Mhm.
both enjoy it. He
It's
enjoys it as well.
it's fascinating. We have Councilperson Wallace Red, who is also a
Mhm,
parliamentarian. We have several council members who are so adept with running a meeting with Robert's Rules. It's incredible to watch them.
mhm,
Um, we have staff members who understand. So it's just
mhm.
it's just it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I just kind of geek out on it too, and so
I see other bodies when I'm, like,
mhm.
watching in other parts of the country,
Yes.
and I'm just like, "I don't know if that was." I'm often very thankful for how well our folks handle.
Absolutely, and there's so many there's so many twists and turns to
Mhm,
Robert's Rules. I mean, it's a pretty thick book.
mhm,
There's a lot there, but, I always keep with me the, abridged version of Dummy for Dummies. It's my cheat sheet,
mhm.
really,
It's
and
a good
so
book.
it is, and I've actually shared it with a lot of our, chairs for our boards and commissions
Mhm,
because it's just a general voting and motions and things like that. For the most part, that's all you really need
mhm,
to worry about. Sometimes in our council meetings, we get a little bit more in depth with some of the motions and
mhm,
and
mhm.
such. But
Uh, Kinda circling back.
mhm,
Oh, real quick, part of Robert's Rules,
yes,
I'm curious if people
uh,
know that there's 2 types of things that we vote on for city council.
mhm,
There's resolutions and
yes.
ordinances. If you real quick, could you
Mhm.
explain that to people?
Sure. So a resolution is basically the sense of the council. Um, Most often, it's something along those lines. Um, it can also be like when we recently nominated the city attorney.
Mhm,
That was a resolution,
mhm,
and so
and they're 1 vote.
they're one vote, and so it's one and done. It could also be if we have like a contract or something that like that, or an MOU, something along those lines. We would use a resolution.
I guess one way to think about it is a resolution exists within the current law,
Mhm.
and an ordinance sets to establish or alter law within the
Correct.
city code or
So
such thing.
basically, yes. So ordinance is a law basically. A lot of times we'll go in and amend ordinances over time, so you can go in and amend something. Most recently, something that affected me was getting back to our noticing times. We had to go in and change the city code, and so we did that or by ordinance.
Mhm,
And so a lot of times changing things by city code for city code is done with an ordinance. We have zoning ordinances that go through, and all ordinances require two readings, and that always trips people up. They don't,
mhm,
and that's for us. I think Metro Council has three readings,
mhm,
so it can be different depending on
mhm.
which city or which council.
And something I think trips people up often are
Mhm.
it's not uncommon, I've noticed, for some folks to maybe want something a little different with
Mhm.
an ordinance, but they like the basic idea.
Mhm.
And I think I'm saying this because I think some people might say, "Oh, why'd they vote for that?"
Right.
Uh, that a lot of times I think that's approached with the intent of, "Oh, we can offer an amendment next time, but we want to keep things on a certain time frame."
Right. They can offer up amendments. You can even offer up amendments on the floor.
Mhm,
If maybe you think an ordinance is pretty good, but maybe you just want to change it that much further. You can certainly do that and amend it on the floor in a council meeting. The council are not allowed to speak to each other about business
mhm,
outside of a council meeting. And so, executive session is their working session essentially. And that's where they can talk about everything that's on
mhm,
the agenda and that's going to be voted on the next week. And so, sometimes that'll trigger something from their conversation. And then you'll hear someone say, I'm going to bring an ordinance next week.
mhm.
And so that's a really cool thing about watching all of this take place,
Yeah.
and again, where our citizens come in, there may be an ordinance for something and a zoning ordinance or something that citizens aren't real happy about.
Mhm,
And I've seen where things are sent back to the Regional Planning Commission, or maybe a zoning has been changed. We most recently that was done where zoning was changed
mhm,
because the public spoke up, and our councils are your representatives, and that so it's really fascinating to watch
mhm.
in a meeting what can take place.
Yeah. And kind of just going back to a term we used way earlier,
Mhm.
but we've talked about Robert's rules. We
Mhm.
talked about the city code. I wanted to kind of let people know what this. We talked about the code, but
Mhm.
we also have a charter, and I
We
kind of
do.
wanted to let people know what that is. Especially there was some talk about the charter back
Mhm.
a couple years ago, and I think it was a lot for people to digest.
Yes. Yes.
So what is the city charter?
So the charter, it's kind of in a way almost like our Declaration of Independence, I guess.
Mhm,
It sets out the structure of our city. It's kind of like bylaws in a way,
mhm,
and so it structures what the city does. It's I don't know, several pages long, and that's
mhm.
even on our website as well. And so we try not too much to change the charter
Mhm.
because it's just
It's
it
like
takes a
messing with
lot.
the foundation.
Right. But sometimes there are things that you have to change within the charter. But it doesn't happen very often.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's sort of
Mm.
both, Declaration of
Uh-huh.
Independence and Constitution in
Yes.
one,
Uh-huh.
and like you said, it's something that we don't change a ton, and it
Yes.
involves going to the state when we do,
Yeah,
which
it's
is just the type of charter we
a
have.
lot involved. There's a
Mhm,
lot more involved than just making a change.
mhm.
So
Which is good because you want stability.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And if you could just change at any time, I mean, could you imagine? I think like you said, stability is so
Mhm,
key in how we run this,
mhm.
run the city and
Yeah. And often that's why one of the reasons
Mhm.
we have a mayor, and you mentioned,
Yes.
other places you've worked also had a
Mhm.
city manager.
Yes.
That's a different style of charter.
Right. There
Yeah.
are all kinds of different charters and different ways of leadership. For us, we have a city mayor and a city council, but you may have other cities who have a mayor and alderman. You may
Mhm,
have a city manager who handles the day to day, and
mhm.
then you have a mayor. Sometimes you have a strong mayor. There's just so many
Mhm.
different ways.
I think of aldermen being some of the old, like, a term and position used in some of the older states up
Hmm.
north. Like, I think a lot of cities in Massachusetts and
Yes,
Maine and
and a
such
lot
have
of our
aldermen. Yeah.
smaller cities within
Yes,
Tennessee.
Franklin does, I think, don't
Uh-huh.
they?
It's different. And when we were working on our software and looking at the different videos from the different meetings, it's just fascinating to see what different cities do.
Mhm. Very cool. Kinda moving on real quick,
Mhm.
and, I think we're gonna take a break right here, and so I have a message from, our first lady, Miss Cynthia Pitts, who wants to tell you about an event coming up.
Women of Clarksville. It's the season that we're planning for the Women of Clarksville Expo on August 24th, 2024. And the ladies, the date again is August 24th, 2024 at the Wilma Rudolph Event Center from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is always a great time for us to all get together. And the theme this year is We Are Stronger Together. So, ladies, put that on your date, put it on your calendar, and let's get together and have a wonderful time. Be a lot of vendors, a lot of giveaways, and we're hoping that we'll have our big giveaways that we had last year. So again, remember, Women of Clarksville Expo, August the 24th, 2024.
And now that we're back from that, that does lead me to the last thing I wanted to talk about a little bit because you've been heavily involved in this event every year. We just announced that we're accepting vendor
Mhm.
applications for the Women of Clarksville Expo, the fourth one that we've done. Uh, you've been on that committee, I think, since the beginning. Can
I
you tell me a little
have.
bit about the event?
Uh,
And yeah.
It's my favorite thing that I've worked on within the city. When I first started working here, I was asked to serve on the diversity task force. Um, that was a task force that was built up of city and county and then community members. And so during Women's History Month, we were talking about what we wanted to do to celebrate in March. And we wanted to do an event, but there was it was just too quick to come up with
Mhm,
something like that. So what we did was interview uh, various women business owners in Clarksville, and it was so much fun. So we thought, why not have an event where we can support their businesses and bring them in and celebrate them and celebrate the women in our
mhm,
community. So that's kind of how our first event was born. Now, the first lady had expos prior to
mhm,
this, so we kind of merged the two together, and so we wanted to bring all of our women together and have them have the opportunity to get medical and dental checkups. We have representatives from our military community out to help. Sometimes we have mental health. Every year we have a theme.
Mhm.
And so it's just been a wonderful way to celebrate all of our great women within the city of Clarksville. And it every year it grows. And I'm just so proud to be a part of
Mhm.
this incredible event.
So what's your I know we've
Mhm.
both sat on that or and been part of
Mhm.
that committee for the past couple of years. What is your role, would you say, within the committee?
So when I started, I was I was co-chair with the first lady, and so I was in charge of getting all the vendors and the layout, and on and on. She and I led the committee. It was a lot of work, and then as I changed jobs, it, the scope was way more than I had time to dedicate to. So now I'm kind of a backup to Stephanie.
Mhm.
She and the first lady co-chair the committee, and so I still help with selecting the vendors. Until this year, I was doing the layout, but Parks and Rec, they're so experienced that we've kind of
Mhm.
handed that off. I'm in a lot of ways a resource, and because of what we've done in the past, I do the program and the schedule
Mhm.
and get all that together. And
Yeah.
then fit in wherever they need me.
Mhm. And there's so many people we could go through who are part of that committee
Oh
who work
gosh,
so hard, and I'm gonna put a list of them in the, bio. People that come
wonderful.
to mind,
Mhm.
Heather Phillips,
Yes.
uh, Veronica Williams over
Mhm.
at Clarksville Transit,
Mhm.
Carlye Sommers over at Gas and
Yes.
Water. We have a lot of local partners as
Mhm.
well, of course. Just a
Mhm.
ton of people that work really hard to make that event as incredible as it can be. And it is, I think, one of our best events
I
locally.
think so too. And one of the events where almost every, if not every department is involved in some way or another.
Mhm.
From CPD directing traffic and working with us to make sure that everybody has a good and safe day, to transit, who provide the buses for us
Mhm.
to use. We're so thankful for them. Um, they shuttle everyone from parking lot to door, which is pretty fantastic. Um, we have different departments who come and staff the event with
Mhm.
booths. So if you are interested in a job within the city, we have police and fire that are at the event.
Mhm.
Which it's so much fun to see a little girl see a female officer or a female firefighter and say, "Wow, I can be that one day."
Yeah.
So it's just one of our biggest events, and it's just fun to get to work with all the different departments.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it
Mhm.
started with a focus on local women-owned
Mhm.
businesses, and it's also just a really great event to see how much that part of Clarksville has grown. There's a lot
Yes.
more women-owned businesses than there used to be, and
Yeah.
you can see a lot of growth in the community.
Uh-huh.
Not just that, but this year's theme is stronger together, and I think
Yes.
that goes well with the national theme for Women's History Month, which is women who advocate for diversity, equity, and
Mhm.
inclusion. And I think you can see that with this event
Oh,
that we have
absolutely.
a broad array of
Mhm.
people from all over the place, from all walks of life, a very
Yes.
rich, diverse group of business
Mm.
owners at this event.
And I wish we had a bigger space and we could take them all, because like you said, there every year there's more and more
Mhm.
women-owned businesses, and we want to celebrate that.
Well, there's an arena just adjacent
There
to us.
sure is if
Maybe
they're
we can
listening.
talk.
Hint, hint.
Yeah, Kylie Wilkerson, you hear me? We're
Let's
coming
talk.
for that arena floor. Oh, that's great. But, yeah, I did wanna end off
Mhm.
just kinda talking about Women's History Month. I wanted to talk with you, particularly this month for this episode, and all your work you've done, with that, committee and advancing that aspect of
Mhm.
Clarksville. You've worked in the public sector for a
Long
while, for
time.
a good
Mhm.
part of your life.
Mhm.
How has that changed as far as being a woman working in government? And I know that's sort of a hokey question,
Yeah.
maybe, but
No, it's actually a good question. Back in the day, women weren't in leadership roles. It was very rare that you would have a female department head, or a manager for that. Most women were secretaries or executive assistants, or serving as a city clerk. City clerk's office hasn't changed a whole lot in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as government, even people serving as council members,
Mhm.
there was a time when we didn't have any women council members,
Now we have a
or
majority.
we have a majority. We had, prior to Mayor Pitts, we had a female mayor.
Mhm.
That's almost unheard of. Back in Sacramento, we had one female mayor. So over time, you're starting to see a change of and representation of the makeup of our community, and
Mhm.
it's just been really wonderful to see, uh, because they represent, especially council, they represent everybody, and so it's really important that you have a good representation serving on your council to represent you.
Mhm. And especially with the city of Clarksville,
Mhm.
it's not only uh perhaps more than any
Mhm.
time in our history we've seen uh women in a lot of these department head
Mhm.
roles, and I can think of various people to
Yeah.
mention, but we also have the best people in the city of Clarksville.
That's so true. I always tell people, I always say, one, I have the best job in Clarksville because I think I do. And two, we're family here.
Mhm.
And that's not just lip service. We really and truly are a family here. We all enjoy working together. We care about one another, and we work very well together.
Mhm.
It's just, we just had a department head meeting yesterday, some training, and it was so great to sit with my colleagues and talk about what we're doing and how what I'm doing affects another department, and so on and so on.
Mhm.
And it's just really a beautiful place to work.
Yeah, I love it. And I love this. This is my favorite project in the world because I get to talk about all
That's
those
so
people and
cool.
brag about them.
We've got a lot of people to brag about. We
Yeah, I
really
love it.
do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Wonderful. Well, I think that's about all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything I missed?
I just want to say thank you. This was fun. I always I'm the behind the scenes person. I like being behind the scenes. I like taking care of people. And so it was just kind of fun to get to be highlighted and share a little bit about what I do. So
Wonderful.
thank you.
Well, as Lisa said, her office is one that
Mhm.
likes to get guests
Yeah,
to, if you have questions or would like to reach out, you can find contact info on the website. And again,
absolutely.
thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Casey. This was fun.
And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time on Public Square.